Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host. He is Jordan Watkins at Big 75 Fella, joining me a little bit earlier here because I'm taking a little mini siesta here as we record on Monday morning. So we're as we were saying before the show, we're flying blind. We don't have the PFF, we don't have the analytics to lean on. So this is going to be less nerdy than usual, perhaps. So unfortunately for that, we're going to have to actually, use our tape study, talk about what actually happened on the field. So, I'm in a big bind there, Jordan, because as you know, we don't, we don't actually watch the game. We just look at numbers on a page. But other than that, how you doing this morning?
Yeah, I think outside of playing Madden, I don't really pay attention much to football, never have in my life. So this will be tough, but no, things are good. It's a Victory Monday. I mean, Victory Mondays always feel good, and especially when you look at the game, and of course we'll talk about it more in depth in a second. That was one of those games where I was already ready, at least as a fan. I know as a player you need your time off, but as a fan, I was like, all right, can it be next Sunday already? I'm like, bring on the Commanders. I'm juiced after that game. I still am, the next day.
Yeah, it's so important to snap that losing streak because I don't think fans realize what we're feeling as a fan base is like a microcosm of what a team would be feeling. Like whatever emotions you feel as a fan, it's more for the players that are actually involved. Like it's more intense even for them. So if you were feeling down and depressed about the state of this team after 2 losses, you can only imagine what the actual players are feeling. So it feels like a weight's lifted. It feels like, okay, we've bounced back. We're on the right track again. Now we just gotta stack dubs. That's how we do it. And keep from taking a step back. And we talked about it on the post game show, how things looked. The offense took a big step forward. It was good to see. They overcame a lot of mistakes. That's probably still going to be a thing with this team for a while. Hopefully we'll have it. Hopefully we'll have it sorted out by December. November, December when we're playing. Hopefully those all important closeout games to make a playoff run here. But what was important was they overcame the mistakes and played hard and mostly. We got to see Desmond Ridder have his best game as a pro. Yes. So we'll get into that right off the top here, guys. Before we dive in, I want to bring you a quick word from our sponsor, betonline.ag, folks. Football is back, and BetOnline is your number one information source for all your sports wagering info with all the up-to-the-minute stats, news, scores, and matchup breakdowns that you need. You can get the latest game odds, spreads, and totals from the NFL and college football at your fingertips with BetOnline's real-time updates on statistics, news, and odds. From Week 1 all the way to the college football playoff and Super Bowl, BetOnline gives you access to the best football promotions and contests available anywhere online. We got a game on tap against the Commanders this week, which going into the season, a little bit, concerned about how that defense was going to be, that it was going to be a very formidable defense to play. Still a strong defensive line, but the Commanders have allowed 30-plus points in each of the last 4 games. So that is a little bit of an alarming stat. So maybe the Falcons' offensive overs, maybe those are in play again. But hey, no matter what you guys want to do, head to that website today, betonline.ag, or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Just remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Jordan, we usually start with the defense because we like to open things on a positive note, but the defense was still very good. But I think we decided to open with the offense today because, I don't know when the next time we'll have such a positive offensive breakdown here. But I'll let you take the lead if you want to start with Ridder, if you want to focus on the pass protection, which was definitely maybe the best we've seen so far. Just a good day overall for the offense, but particularly Ridder and the pass protection, I think, were the 2 standout units.
No, absolutely. And I think I want to start, I guess, with a more holistic picture because I know in the weeks past, and maybe the way I said it or was phrased, it kind of was like oh, you're saying this because you want to see Desmond do poorly. It's like, no, I actually don't.
That's just
actually
that's
it was
a yeah.
I was actually a pretty big fan of Desmond Ridder when he was coming out of Cincinnati. But when I was saying I would love to be able to only blame the quarterback for what's going on, what I was saying was that meant that everything else was looking a certain way. Like it usually, if you have offensive struggles or struggles for any unit, you would feel much better if you can only pin it on, hey, it's this one reason why this didn't look well, or this is that one reason why it doesn't do this way, do that way, things like that. And when you looked at it these last few weeks, especially, play calling and play scheming wasn't very good. Pass protection wasn't very good. You had a lot of guys who were running routes with two receivers in the same vicinity of each other. It's hard to be successful as a quarterback, especially a young quarterback, when all of those factors are around you. And so that's why I was so happy to see what was going on this week. You saw much better protection. You had no sacks. I mean, either way. And I don't even know. Might have been. I know there was one free blitzer that came through on Ridder a little earlier in the game, but besides that, I'd be surprised to see how many times he actually got touched by Houston's pass rush. And you saw some different concepts, even when they ran the sprint out on the 2-point conversion, which, as everybody knows me, I hate sprint out by the goal line. But, and this is something one of my friends pointed out, said, yeah, but at least this time they gave him 3 options instead of 2. Yeah, where in the past you've seen 2 options, so it doesn't really, it looks a little clunky. So again, it was just, there were certain differences in this game where it's like, okay, Desmond, everything around you is what you need right now. And I'm saying that even with a less than stellar run attack, and also some penalties here and there that really weren't ideal. But in terms of, again, the scheme, which was better, pass pro, which was better, it's like, all right, Desmond, here you go. You got the things around you. Let's see what you do. And he balled out. So it was just happy to see that all the other systems around Desmond didn't fail him or make things tougher on him today, which we have seen in the past.
Yeah, it's great to see. It's nice, you love it when a plan comes together, and I think one of the nice things about this week is that it showed not only that Dez could bounce back and have a very good quarterback day. He never had eclipsed 300 yards. I think it just all started to weigh on the people's opinions of Ridder, where it's like, he's never had 300 yards. He's never had this great passing day, so maybe he's just this mediocre at best quarterback. Mm-hmm. You eventually you need to prove that you can do that. And I think with this performance, he joined like 3 or 4 other Falcons quarterbacks in history who passed for over 300 yards and a touchdown and didn't take a sack or throw an interception. Yeah. So Matt Ryan did that, like 6 or 7 times because Matt Ryan's the GOAT. Mike Vick notably never did it. And I think there were a couple other Falcons quarterbacks that managed it once. So, that's good company and good for Ridder to get into that category. But I think obviously a lot of praise goes to Ridder for being able to overcome the adversity of the last couple of weeks, because we could feel it here. Like the intensity of the criticism and the negativity surrounding Ridder was intense. And again, just like we said earlier, like if you think it's intense here, it's more intense for Dez. Like if I'm like, Absolutely. Wow, you guys need to calm down, Ridder's probably, having to live in like a cone of silence or something for the week. But I think that he showed that, he is able, you never really tune out the noise. That's always like a cliche. You can't avoid it, but
it's there.
It's always there, but you can put your head down and you can keep working and push through. And that's exactly what he did. So props to him. But also it wasn't just a Ridder thing that needed to be fixed. We talked about the offensive line being a huge issue, particularly in that week 3 game. And then the play calling just wasn't doing him any favors. And it seems like outside of still a bunch of mistakes, many of those were dumb. We saw some uncharacteristic drop. We saw a drop from Jonnu Smith, who doesn't really drop the football.
That was a dart.
Yeah, that was a great throw. And then we saw just fumbles, and I think the Bijan one was just really bad luck. You get speared by the helmet. There's not much. People are like, oh, you got to hold on. Have you ever had that happen to you guys? Like that? There's not really a lot you can do if they really get the helmet right on the football like that. It's just.
And it was a guy being pushed into the ball by another guy. Like those are just certain things you don't prepare for.
You can't.
It's just like you said. It's kind of just unfortunate.
Yeah, but I thought the play calling, the protection, also improved. And I think it's nice to see, especially from Smith. I think a lot of people think he's hard-headed and stubborn, but I think those of us that actually talk to him, he does preach that he wants to change. Like, he wants to be able to shape the offense around his playmakers and his players and where guys are. But that takes time. I think everyone was expecting, like, oh, he said he can do this, so why hasn't he made changes in the last week? Well, it takes time to incorporate significant changes and to work in more plays that, like, training camp's not that long. It's no longer 2-a-days. You don't have the same amount of time and preparation that you had 10, 15, 20 years ago. So you do have to sort of go in with an abridged version of your offense to start the season, and then you sort of add more as needed. And I think maybe we're finally seeing them like, okay, we need to add more quick game. We need to get those quick hitters going. We need to give Des some easier stuff. So let's drill that stuff into the offense and get that going. And it's encouraging to see that executed, that we know, okay, they're not just tuning it out. They're not saying, like, we're not making any changes. We're good. Like, our scheme is fine. Everything's fine. We just need Des to play better, because it is multifaceted. And I think they're rewarded now with statistically one of their best offensive games, even though they didn't match the point output from the Packers game. I think that's still the best game overall offensively. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the passing game, it's definitely the best game so far.
Yeah. No, yeah, without a doubt. And the thing is about it, when you look at the game, you can see the score, but if you watch the game, you would see that how close they were to having this be not even just their best output this year. This could have been the best offensive output of the Arthur Smith regime had they held on to the football. Because you think about when those fumbles happen, they had drives of like 60 plus, 70 plus. I think the game winner was around 56 to 58 yards. They had some very long sustained drives. The Jonnu Smith fumble happened inside the 20. The Bijan fumble, that was still in minus territory. But there were certain things there where, the Drew Dahlman penalty took them out of field goal range. That took points off the board. I mean, you really could have easily looked at a 30-plus point output by the Falcons today. And then even some other things that the offense didn't have control of. Let's just say, hypothetically, Jesse Bates does come down that interception. Now you have the ball in plus territory. Another chance to put points on the board. So even with the 21 points being scored, the crazy thing about it, and this is what I love, when JT O'Sullivan does his QB school reviews, as he did the Justin Fields one from Thursday night, and saying, like, it's crazy. Even in the good game that you had, you can turn on the tape and still see these moments where it's been like, wow, it could have even been that much better. And it's always better to be in that territory of it versus, oh man, that was not a good performance, but look at all the things that we left out there.
Yeah. No, and I think that was one of the big things about the first couple of games of this season, which was like, they did win. Like, it's like, oh yeah, we won, so we're willing to overlook some of this stuff, but they're going to have to clean up these turnover worthy plays, because like that luck's not going to hold. And then what did we see weeks 3 and 4? Oh, turnover luck does not hold. And especially in week 4, it's disastrous. And really cost the team the game. This week is not the case. This week, it's like we won while making mistakes, but like we really should have. It's not like we got lucky that, they dropped interceptions or something like that. It's like, no. We dropped the interception and we made these mistakes and we still won. And like the second half, particularly for this Falcons offense, they figured out whatever the Texans were doing. Like, not necessarily on the ground until the end, but like you said, like that first drive after halftime, they get the Bijan fumble after a couple yards. That, who knows what would have happened there. But the next drive, they drive 62 yards to the 25 where that Jonnu Smith fumble happens. And that was looking like an absolute scoring drive. Then the touchdown, later in the third quarter, and then the 2 field goals after that. Like, they had figured out that Texans defense, because it was after those 2 fumbles, touchdown, field goal. And, even before that, like you said, the 2 drives before that, they were in field goal range, and then they had those stupid, mistakes, penalties, whatever. So like basically outside of the 2 fumbles, their last 5 drives were all potential scoring drives.
Yeah, it was something.
3 of them were scoring drives. So they had figured out, and you love to see the adjustments. And I think why this team has been so good in the second half is because they do have a staff that, while they haven't quite figured out necessarily the best way to attack their opponent off the break of the game, they have done a great job of looking at what's going on at halftime and adjusting. And I think that they deserve credit for that as well.
No, absolutely. And then the thing for me too is I know there's been this thing about Desmond Ridder's like he gets better as the game goes on, which is true. But again, this is the best I've seen him from start to finish in a game. But even within that, you still saw him get a little hotter as the game went on. Like I rewatched the game again last night, and Mark Schlereth even commented on it a couple of times about how he was scanning the field. Well, first off, it helps to have time to scan the field. So that played a big part in it. You know, again, shout out the offensive line. But there were so many times where he'd start looking left, scan all the way back across the field to the right, and then find somebody open and just rip it. He had a couple of throws where it was just I like to make my own sound effects sometimes. It was like like it just had that extra something to it on there. And some throws where he threw guys open, threw guys to protect themselves. I know he did one for Mac Hollins earlier in the game. He had one to Kyle Pitts as well. He threw low to protect Kyle. I mean, you want to talk about he was in the building and feeling himself. That's what Desmond Ridder looked like to me. And again, sometimes, and I know it's crazy to remember this. That was only start number 9 for him, which we could potentially look back at that game, a few years down the road or however this looks and say that was the game where it clicked. That was the one. And so now that's the hope. But also at the same time, I'm hoping that that's also the game where pass pro for the O-line clicks. That's I want to say that for them too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I'd hit people with the Matrix meme. He's beginning to believe, right? Doesn't remember he's getting there. Because that's when Neo from the Matrix, because I feel like maybe I'm an old man and some young people haven't even seen the Matrix, which is a travesty. You should go watch it. But this is when he starts he becomes most powerful once he actually realizes and believes that, oh, actually, I am the guy. I am the chosen one. So Ridder may be starting to finally believe in himself. That self-confidence is key. It's absolutely essential for an NFL quarterback. So, and it's even more impressive coming out of the dumps of the last 2 games to be unfazed like that and to go out and have your most confident performance. So big props to Ridder. But you mentioned the pass protection too. And if you did have another thought on Ridder, we could tackle that first. But I did want to give a shout out to those offensive linemen too.
No, absolutely. And again, I really, really have to give a shout out to Storm Norton. Again, I don't think people understand how hard it is to just step right in the middle of a game and have to perform against, other professionals. And I mean, just to give you an analogy, people in baseball often say the hardest thing to do is to be a pinch hitter, especially later in the game, right? You're cold, haven't really done too much. Yeah, you might go down into the cage, get a couple swings here or there, but that's about it. You're not seeing any live pitching. You don't know if or when your name's going to get called. Well, it's the same thing, especially for a reserve offensive lineman. I mean, if you look at a game, usually if you look at the snap counts, the 2 positions where you'll see for sure that, barring injury, that everybody played every snap. It's usually offensive line and quarterback. Those are the 2 spots. So, it's usually not a position where you're sitting there saying, outside of maybe a heavy personnel package or something like that you're going to get in the game. But no, he gets in there. And again, like we said, Desmond Ridder barely gets touched in pass pro. And then also one of the biggest runs in the game, Tyler Algier in that 4th quarter, last drive, is on the right side. Mm-hmm. So, also give credit to Arthur Smith for saying no, you know what? We trust this. We know we can make this happen. Obviously, there's an all-pro guard right there next to him. Let's run it this way and make it work. Because, for the first part of when Storm Norton was in, everything was going to the left run-wise. So, no, give him credit. Give the whole O-line credit and pass pro. The run blocking, there's a whole different conversation we could have there. But no, I mean, like I said, give credit to him, give credit for the O-line and pass pro, because, I mean, again, without time, and we talked about the stats in terms of in the 4 games last year, how long Desmond Ridder had in the pocket before pressure came versus what it was looking like this year. And this game, at least so far, is the outlier. Let's see if we can make it the norm.
Yeah. Yeah, and Toledo legend Storm Norton, by the way.
Yeah.
And it's now the Falcons somehow have acquired like 2 of the players that I watched play when I was briefly around the University of Toledo for a few years back in the early days of my time as an alcoholic. Yeah. So yeah, it's funny now we got Logan Woodside too from that same team.
That's right.
I think that's how we unlock Storm Norton. You just got to get him and Woodside back together. But
that's it.
Yep, that was the secret all along. But yeah, I mean, Norton always a guy that was known as a good run blocker, but I think people, had rightly so harshly criticized his pass protection when he had to start basically an entire season for the Chargers. Mm-hmm. But he comes in and actually ends up playing, I think, almost 50% of the snaps, maybe more than 50% of the snaps. I didn't realize how early Caleb McGarry did go out in this game. So, good for Storm Norton, and hopefully that can continue, because we don't know how long we're going to be without Caleb McGarry. We haven't really heard any news on that front. So the hope obviously is that McGarry's ready to return soon. But if Storm Norton can play like this, then we'll be able to weather the storm. And this is really the first test of the Falcons' depth on the offensive line.
Weather the storm.
Yep. Exactly. You like that? Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Just work that in. You see, it was so casual. Somebody was, yeah.
I wasn't going to let it slip past me though. I couldn't let that
Thank
happen.
you. Thank you for appreciating that one. But pass pro was good all around. I think you critique Drew Dahlman with some mistakes, and then we could get into the run blocking being a problem. But this offensive line, the problem has been that it's just been super hot and cold, which was not the case at all last year. They were pretty much lights out running the football every game last year. You realize that they got a new rookie left guard in there. Maybe that's taking some time to incorporate. But, it was just puzzling that Jake Matthews is struggling so much as a run blocker. That just not really has ever been, that's not really ever been a problem for him, but he was really having his issues in this game. And at least the pass protection held up. And that was good. But we, just an uncharacteristically poor game from the offensive line as run blockers, when, that's always been sort of known as like, no matter what, we could fall back on these guys blocking up the run well.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, give credit to Houston for their game plan. Especially Will Anderson, Jonathan Grenard, those 2 were phenomenal in setting edges and not really letting the Falcons get outside very often. I mean, you want to talk about pushing back and knocking back our offensive tackles. I mean, they did it consistently. It was as a former D lineman, I know I'm going for the Falcons and I want the Falcons to do well, but just appreciating good D line play and good, front 7 play. It was a thing of beauty of what they were doing. So I want to give them that. It's just so hard for any offense, any running attack, that if your line of scrimmage is consistently being reset, a yard, 2 yards, maybe sometimes even 3 yards in the backfield, you better have something very, very special to make things work in the backfield. Now, of course, the Falcons do, and Bijan Robinson, but even then, you see how hard it was for him. I know we're so used and accustomed to already him making a couple people miss in such a small area of space, but I mean, there was just nowhere to go. I mean, even in the middle, the Texans, some of the D tackles too, did a good job of really reestablishing and resetting the line of scrimmage. So, but the thing is, again, if anyone has watched the 49ers play the last couple of years, because again, that's where D'Amico came from as a DC, they played like, in terms of the edge and the attitude, that's the same type of attitude San Francisco played with. Right. And I'm not saying it's the same type of guys, because I think there are a couple more all-pro caliber players on San Francisco. Right. I think we saw that
maybe a few
in the game. Yeah. I think we saw that a bit in the game last night too. But in terms of that attitude and energy, you can definitely see it. I think that's a big reason too why it was so important. They brought Jimmy Ward over too. You know, he had a lot of things to say before the game, but but at least on the field, right? He knows what that energy's like. He knows what that kind of edge is like, since he was actually the one out there doing it. So that was so important to establish into that culture. But no, you saw the way they were playing. They were playing mean and nasty. But again, that's how D'Amico Ryans led defenses play. So I want to give them as much credit as I do want to give blame for the Falcons O-line. And of course, with Drew Dahlman, I know everyone has a lot to say about the penalty. In terms of it being late, yes, it was late. Like I'm not gonna, gonna say anything opposite
late,
of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's also, I mean, I'd be lying to myself if I said that's not an O-lineman thing. If you're standing around a pile, you better be ready, because they're an O-lineman. They're going to try to find a hit on you. What I didn't like the most about the play is that, well, two things. One, it got you at field goal range. That's most importantly. But two, there's nothing good that's going to happen on a play if you can't see somebody's face. And I say that whether you're a blocker, if you are on defense, anything. Like Toa his back was towards where Drew was. So yeah, if you hit him in that situation, there's literally nothing good that can happen out of that, whether it's blocking the back, unnecessary roughness, like any combination, if you will. So that was like, those were the two biggest issues for me with that play.
Yeah, you could tell they were frustrated about not getting the push there. And again, D'Amico Ryans deserves a ton of credit. And the Texans defense deserves a lot of credit too. I mean, they're way ahead of where anyone thought they would be at this point, both on offense and defense. And they're going to absolutely have a shot in the AFC South, because, the Jaguars obviously are playing better. They just beat the Bills.
They better play in London every game.
Yeah, that's their secret. Like, Falcons have to be at home every game. Jaguars have to be in London every game. But they'll have an opportunity to challenge there for that division, just because of how well CJ Stroud and that defense are playing. And again, we talked about it. Like, they had blown out their previous two opponents going into this game, and people had never been more confident in Houston over the last 3 or 4 years. So I think their fans rightly expected to win this game, and I think their defense absolutely rose to the challenge of doing what I think they believed would be the key to the game, which is to shut down the Falcons' rushing attack. And they didn't shut it down. The Falcons still put up over 100 yards on the ground. It was not efficient. That's for damn sure. They did really good though at limiting it, especially until about the last couple drives of the game. But they just weren't prepared for the wrinkles they threw into the passing game. And then it doesn't help when their starting three corners are out. But I think they bottled up the run well. And then the Falcons were just able to take advantage of that lean towards the run game and actually make a defense pay for that finally, like we've been waiting for.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like you said, you got to make a defense pay. You can only play against who's out there on the field against you, because I know even going into this next week, and I know they'll have 10 days off up until when we play them. But I already know Commanders fans are freaking out of, oh my goodness, who's Emmanuel Forbes going to guard? He had a tough day. And he's not the biggest corner. And as we know, there's a lot of size for the Falcons on the outside. So they're already freaking out about that. But again, if the Falcons continue this on and do what they do, if you throw a 50-50 ball to Drake London to start off the fourth quarter against Emmanuel Forbes, I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, well, you only threw it against Emmanuel Forbes, so it doesn't really count. Like, no, it still counts. It's the NFL. Like, there's no – you don't have – outside of power rankings, you don't have a top 25 that – you go up or down based on how.
Oh yeah, this win doesn't count.
You don't. Yeah.
We're taking you out of the playoff.
You you don't. Yeah, exactly. Like you don't have to worry about that. So, and I mean, if you look at it too, you had a couple of teams. I mean, we've seen a couple of good corners on the outside these first few weeks. Jair Alexander, obviously of note with Green Bay. Yeah, J.C. Horn for most of the game against Carolina before he got hurt. And there are a couple of others in there as well, but for the most part, it's just like, I mean, I'll put it the other way. Let's go back to last year. Falcons played Cincinnati. You think the Bengals are saying, well, you only played Cornell Armstrong and AJ Terrell wasn't healthy the whole game, so those numbers don't matter. The win doesn't really count. No, it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. So, as we could very well be here the opposite way, say, man, they didn't have their three corners and we still couldn't put a good game plan together or make things work in the pass game.
Yeah, exactly. So you can only play the opponent that's in front of you, like you said. Enough of the nitpicking. If the Falcons put up like 40 points on the Texans secondary, it'd be like, okay, maybe they just embarrassed some reserve corners. But I didn't think that they were really like I don't think those guys played poorly. Like I think the depth guys they had in there were playing solid football. It wasn't like they were out of position or just getting dusted on every play. The Falcons were just making the plays they needed to. So I think, again, props to D'Amico Ryans. He has that defense playing at a very high level with, I think, an overall talent disadvantage. A lot like, I think that defense is kind of like the Falcons defense this year, where they insert a few veterans that we know that they're familiar with the scheme, and then they get some young guys in there to really take the thing over the top, and they're definitely doing that. So props to that defense. And to the Texans as a whole, I think that's a fun team. And their fans certainly deserve that after many years of just depression surrounding that franchise. So good.
We can relate.
Yes, we can definitely relate. So good. Best of luck to you Texans going forward now that this game is over. But we'd be remiss if we didn't praise the defense some more, the Falcons defense, because once again, they bring this thing home. I mean, the offense gets the headlines, especially at the end of this one. But if not for the defense, they bailed the offense out over and over and over and over and over and over again. They just continued to bail out mistakes. And they just it was workmanlike, just like, oh, all right, we fumbled again inside the 20. All right, guys, let's go. We got this. Just casually just stuff them, field goal. Like 4 field goals for the Falcons. On drives where, some of these field goals that Houston's getting down into very much plus territory, or they're starting with the ball. I think the first drive of the game, Houston starts on the 47 of Atlanta, held them to a field goal. Or the second drive of the game, the first drive for the Texans. They start on the Atlanta 30 after that Bijan fumble, hold them to a field goal, just 6 net yards allowed. It's like they just kept finding ways to keep this close. And then, aside from that 75-yard touchdown drive, they force a whopping 6 punts on the day, including 3 3-and-outs. So just so impressive what they're doing. Just really, really proud of that unit for again, last couple weeks, offense has been letting them down, and then finally the offense was there for them at the end of this one, but wouldn't have been the case if not for their strong play throughout this game.
No, without a doubt. And I think the thing for me, I'm just looking kind of at the drive summaries, right, of what was going on. And so many times I'm looking at this where it's for the Falcons, if you start off the game 3 and out, okay, boom. So here comes the defense on the field. Later in the game, there's a 4-play drive for the offense. Okay, here comes the defense. You hold them to a field goal. Right after the Texans field goal, 3 and out, punt, boom, you force them to punt. Another punt for the Falcons after 7 plays, force a punt by the Texans. So even when there were some sudden changes going on out there, the Falcons still found a way to have that energy to stand up and not let that turnover or sudden change turn from not even a 3 to a 6, maybe it was a 0 to a 6, right? And I think that was what was so impressive, because I think in years past, what we had seen, and this is from a talent perspective, but also a depth perspective, where the defense just wore out over time of being on the field, of the offense couldn't get it together because you just didn't have the bodies. Well, now it feels like you do. We talked about the D-line rotation up front. We've talked about the number of corners that they have on the back end. Even if you need to bring in DeMarco Hellams, you can do it now. And things of that nature. So just overall, you can feel the difference in the situation where this defense is. And at the end of the day, just like you saw, and I know I talked about D'Amico Ryans and his energy and passion and how that plays onto the field for the Texans defense, you can see how the energy and passion of Ryan Nielsen plays out into this Falcons defense. There was a one play, it was, I think, is either late third or early fourth. I can't remember fully right now. They tried to run a screen, Houston did, on third down. Falcons are all over it. CJ Stroud's over by the Falcons sideline, throws it away. Ryan Nielsen is jumping up and down, hitting every helmet he can possibly find, but like as a player, you love that.
Yeah.
Like you love it, and you really do feed off of it. I know everyone always talks about feeding off the crowd, and rightfully so. That is a big thing, especially when you're at home. But when you can also feed off the energy of your coaches and coordinators in a way like that, oh my goodness, like that, it does wonders. It really does wonders.
It does. And yeah, I'm trying to figure out what's more like we talked about it. Like this defense is getting pressure at a high level, but they're not getting sacks. And sacks are drive killers. Like I think on drives where there's a sack, I think the chances of scoring on a drive with a sack are just plummet. Not impossible, obviously, but they plummet. And this defense is getting it done and are legitimately now a top 7 passing offense, playing now several of the better passing games in the NFL. We've seen them now play against the Lions, who arguably have a top 5 or better passing offense overall. We saw them play against the Texans, who coming into this game had one of the NFL's most consistent passing offenses. Even the Jaguars, who have had some scuffles here and there, again, are one of the NFL's better passing offenses. So this is not, they played the Panthers in week 1 and that's, skewing the stats. It's like, no, like they are legitimately playing some great passing offenses and they're shutting them down without the sacks. And I think the sacks are going to come. I think you look at statistically, you would expect this team to have 10 sacks at this point, given their pressure rate and situations and stuff like that. They've only got 5. I tend to think that's probably, some of it's probably this defense and what's going on. Some of it's some bad luck though. And I think you're going to see some more sacks coming, but it really brings home just how good the coverage is that, like the sacks aren't coming, but it's not a problem. It's like, nope, that's fine. We'll just shut down on the back end and make them throw it away with the pressure. And these guys deserve so much credit for that. Jeff Okudah has come back and he got hit with that hold that I think was really weak. I think that was a clean textbook coverage by Okudah there. Does give up that, look like there's a miscommunication on the coverage on that Dameon Pierce catch. But again, letting the running back break free out of the backfield for like a 10-yard crosser, not the worst thing in the world. And then
you rally and make a tackle. Yeah, exactly.
not the worst thing in the world to let that route go, as opposed to some other ones. But just even Richie Grant, I thought has had 2 of his better games in back-to-back weeks now. He's getting a little bit more aggressive and decisive. And then, of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't shout out probably the player of the game in D. Alford, who was just everywhere.
Yes.
And he only played 62% of the snaps, but it felt like he was involved in like every play. So
he was everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely great game by the secondary.
Yo, absolutely. Again, D. Alford was everywhere. We talked about this in the recap show yesterday in terms of, again, if the league is so pass happy now, which means you're going to be in a lot of nickel and dime packages. But now, because you do that, what teams finally figured out on offense is, well, that means you're going to be light. So we're going to run the ball, which means you need to have some DBs that are not afraid to stop the run. And D. Alford, the way he was shooting out of a cannon to be in the backfield and disrupt stuff in the run game. Then you also see him making plays, 10, 15, 20 yards down the field in the pass game. It was awesome to see. And again, if you know his story from being a CFL tryout guy just 2 years ago to what he's doing now, it was just awesome to so good and fulfilling even for me to watch, to see how his story's played out. And again, the thing for me, and I'm so happy about the secondary, is you did not have any missed assignments or blown coverages that led to an easy touchdown. You saw that 2 weeks in a row. You wanted to get it off tape. I know people are going to say, well, what about the last touchdown? That wasn't a blown coverage. Jesse Bates got beat. He got a little too greedy on the inside move. Good route by Dalton Schultz, Stanford. And And, that's when he stemmed it back upfield and got the touchdown. So good route, got him to bite. It was a touchdown, but that wasn't a blown coverage per se.
He gambled. He thought,
yeah, he gambled.
He was trying to jump the inside move and get the pick.
Exactly.
And if he was right, the game's over. So,
Yeah. But again, the fact that you got that big one play that was on tape 2 weeks in a row, you got that out was really good to see. And again, you see how important that was. Because again, like we keep talking about this, and my whole point was the way the defense has been playing this whole year, if your magic number for the offense is get to 20. So if you get to 20, you're going to put yourself in a good position to win games with how this defense is playing. And well, shocker, they only needed 20 points to win this game, right? But
yeah.
Again, just looking back at it. So let's see, Jacksonville, you gave up 16 points on defense, right? You take away the big play on the missed blown assignment, that's actually 9 points against Jacksonville. Detroit, you gave up 20. You take away the blown coverage as Sam Laporta goes down the right side. That's only 13 points to a very good offense, like you mentioned, Kevin. So the fact that they could get that off the tape, make things that much harder for opponents to find the end zone, really good job by them. I mean, just a really, really good, strong game from the defense overall.
Yeah, you got to give them their props. And I like you said, like this year the magic number might be 20. Last year it was like 25. And that's very different. It doesn't sound like a lot necessarily to people, but like 20 points would be like the 22nd ranked like offense, 21st. So we'll say 20th just to make it easy.
Mm-hmm.
That would be like the 20th ranked offense. That's very attainable for this team. I don't think I think they're going to end up being better than that by the time the dust clears. 25 is 10th. And maybe they could get there by the time the year's over, but like that's a much taller task on a weekly basis than 20. So I think with the defense playing this well, it's so much easier for this offense. They don't really have to force it. They can take their time. They can grind it out. They can afford to be a little bit more cautious potentially, but they can also just afford to figure things out, and they don't have to panic if they allow some points or if they're having a slow start to the game. They don't need to panic because they know they can rely on the offense and on the defense. And I think that's been a great development this year. I've been really impressed with those guys, and we'd be remiss if we didn't shout out Nate Landman once again for his play. That duo with him and Caden Ellis. You worried obviously, like, okay, Troy Anderson wasn't playing the cleanest first few games of the season, but you could see the flashes, and especially in week 3 before he got hurt, I think he was having his best game. And obviously there's worry there. It's like, okay, we saw Nate Landman have a great game in week 2, but like, is that a flash in the pan or what does this guy got? And I think we can see now that no, like he's actually a great fit for this scheme. He slots right in next to Caden Ellis. They haven't really missed a beat, so that's very fortunate. And obviously, we talked about his story a lot, and we can't help but keep mentioning it. But just so happy to see him bounce back and have a productive NFL career now.
Well, the thing for me too is, and I know this has been a topic too of like, oh, he's better than Troy and things like that. People have to remember this is Troy's second year of fully just being a linebacker. Because remember in college he played all over the place. Yeah. Nate Landman has always been a linebacker. So I would hope, right, for Nate Landman's sake, that at least when it comes to processing and the feel and how to read certain formations in place, that he is a step above Troy Anderson right now. That was another part of this year for Troy and why it was such a bummer that he had this injury is because now some more of those reps of being a true linebacker have been taken away from him, right? So, but no, give credit again to Nate, because if coming into the season, if people were to give their spot of, oh boy, if somebody goes down here, we don't have the depth to make up for it. Middle linebacker was one of those positions, right? I think you could probably put receiver up there too, to go with a couple others, but middle linebacker, that was like the spot. Is like, oh man, if Caden or Troy goes down, I don't know what's going to happen. Well, now we're seeing what's happened. Nate Landman is doing exactly just fine. And so I can't emphasize enough for people, because I know this is supposed to be mostly about the trenches, but I can't explain and emphasize enough how important it is to have good middle linebackers, how important that is for the guys up front.
It's critical.
You can be wrong sometimes up front, but if you have the right linebackers, they'll still make you right. And when I say that in terms of if you get out of a gap, you guess wrong, anything like that, those linebackers that are good enough, they're smart enough, they'll still find a way to make you right, and they'll get into the gap that you're supposed to be in. Now, they might get on you after that play, and it might not be a fun talk in the huddle, and it's more so of a one-sided talk, but at least for the play, they'll make you right. The potential yards that could be gained will be minimized, and that's what someone like Nate Landman can do. So, I mean, like I said, just like you said, it's just so hard to not talk about him and the work that he's been doing. So,
yeah, and I got to remind people, because I think people are like, oh, well, Troy's not as good as this UDFA. Like, no, people, you need to remember, like, Nate Landman before his injury was on pace for getting drafted ahead of Troy Anderson, or even being a late first rounder. You look at 2018, 104 tackles, 15 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 2 interceptions. Good stuff.
He was a dude.
Yeah.
He was a dude.
2019, 113 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 1 interception. And then in 2020, which is when he gets hurt, plays 5 games. In 5 games, 53 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, and 4 sacks. In 5 games before, unfortunately, that debilitating injury. He comes back the next year, still productive, but just 63 tackles and 6 tackles for loss that season, and that caused him to go undrafted because he just didn't look like the same player. And it seems like he's finally getting back there. But it was never a question of, does he have the instincts? Does he have the playmaking ability? Like, he's going to be in the right place, but is he athletic enough for the NFL after the injury, I think was the concern. And at this point now, I think 2 years removed from the injury, 3 years removed, looks like he's finally confident again, and he's got that athleticism, and just happy for him. He deserves it. So, but yeah, we should, before we get out of here, got to mention the defensive line once again, doing yeoman's work out there. That Onyemata Grady Jarrett pairing is so good. Had a little bit of a scare with Calais Campbell there. It seems like he's fine. He was cleared to return. They did not elect to put him back in the game, but he was cleared, which is good to see. He was playing, it's funny. We look back to week 1 where he had like 2 missed tackles, and everyone were like, oh, is he washed? I was like, no, like, trust me, folks, like, he's going to be fine. And immediately back to being this elite run defender. And you can see he just doesn't quite have the juice to chase down quarterbacks on the outside anymore. And that's probably why, like, if this was like Calais Campbell of like 2 or 3 years ago, we'd probably have 3 or 4 more sacks now from him just devouring quarterbacks out there. But still a really sound player as a pass rusher who's going to put pressure on, and still an absolutely elite run defender on the outside.
It was pretty funny. There was one play, CJ Stroud, he ended up scrambling out to the right side, but Calais did a great inside move, a little hump move. And like you said, in years past, it's like, all right, here we go. Here come those jets. So where's that acceleration to get there? And it just couldn't happen.
You got that old man speed now.
It was that old man. It's that burst just isn't there anymore. But no, it's like you said. I mean, give credit to Calais, to Grady, David Onyemata, Lorenzo Carter flashed a couple times in this game too in the run game. Also another one. Shout out Bud Dupree. Who I know it wasn't the happiest Saturday for him with what Georgia did to Kentucky, but I mean, he showed up once again in the run game, doing a good job on the outside. I know they did a couple of inside games and stunts with him. He beats the tackle, makes the outside runs bubble some more. I mean, look, if we were talking about just trying to stop the run, we might be looking at the best defensive line in football. But and again, it's just one of those things of when you talk about the run fits and proper run fits, there's so many times where I can take a picture of what the Falcons front is doing, and I would put it in a textbook in terms of definition of this is how it's supposed to look up front when you're stopping the run. Like that's and they do it consistently, which is really awesome to see. In terms of the pass rush, it's just going to be one of those things where obviously we would hope that the secondary continues to make quarterbacks hold the ball. I think that's our best chance right now to really generate some sack numbers, unless Nielsen wants to dial up some more blitzes. Outside of that, you're just going to have to see a lot of line gains and stunts being run up front. Or, let's just keep an eye on what Minnesota's doing.
Yep.
They lost again. So,
yep. I'm about to have that conversation.
I'm just saying.
We're just asking questions on this podcast. That's all.
You might as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, Danielle Hunter. I don't know why I thought Danielle Hunter was 30. He's about to turn 29.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, I thought he was 30 for some reason.
I did too.
About to turn 31, so I don't know where I got that from. But look, like Minnesota is now 1-4. Probably
Justin Jefferson might be hurt.
If not for that Carolina game that they almost lost, they'd be 0-5. And Justin Jefferson has a hamstring injury that could keep him out multiple weeks. So that if they lose another game or two, Terry Fontenot better be just blowing up their phones. Because guess how many sacks Danielle Hunter has right now in 2023?
I think he has 4 or 5, right?
He has more than the Falcons. He has 6.
Oh wow. Okay.
so I'm just saying, folks. Like, yeah. So if the Falcons keep winning, and they're very much in play for this division lead, like they should absolutely make this move because
1,000%.
Send a day 2 pick. You're gonna have 2 seconds or 2/3 plus your regular. So you're gonna have that extra day 2 pick.
And who knows what that Ridley pick is going to be?
Yeah, it's going to be either a 3rd or a 2nd.
Yeah,
one of the 2 at this point. So whatever it takes. Like, if you can, I think you can probably get it done for the 3rd. But if you have to give up the 2nd, it's Danielle Hunter. Like, he's as trustworthy as they come as an edge rusher. Yes, he has a little bit of an injury history, but clearly he's healthy at this point, and that's that's all that you can go off of when you're making this sort of move.
Yeah.
And like the earlier the better, the more you can get him out there. So, but that's really, I think, the only thing, which going into the season, I think we were like, well, they could use this, they could use that, whatever. Now it's like, well, they just really need that one premier edge rusher, and I think they got this. And you add Danielle Hunter to this defense, and you get a 1st-round edge in this upcoming draft, hopefully. Jared Verse falling down boards a little bit, maybe. In the late teens, early 20s, get some Jared Verse action or whoever. I mean, this is a good edge class. So then it's like, oh, now we're cooking. Now we really got something here. So I think that's like the last infinity stone for this defense. They get a guy like Danielle Hunter in here. So, and I don't know about you, but I'd rather have Hunter than Chase Young at this stage. No slight to Chase Young, but Danielle Hunter I think has been much more consistent, even though he's a little bit older.
No, that's fair. And the thing for me with Chase Young, and look, we see it on the offensive side of the ball for us. Even with the game Kyle Pitts had, it was a good game. It was a better game. That right leg, he's still, whether it's just the comfort in it, the trust in it, whatever the case may be, still not there. And, trust me, I was on board in the offseason of, hey, let's see if you can get Chase Young, just because of, not only do I think he had the chance to be a good player, but it was also the fact of, well, because of the injury history, you might be able to get him for cheap so you can bring him in and let's see how well then he is. But I think at this point in time, and to your point, Kevin, it's you need something as close to, if not a for sure thing, in terms of that edge pass rush, because that's the one, like you said, it's the one missing piece right now from really saying from this unit being a top, let's say 10-7 unit to now saying, potentially 7-4. Right. So you if you can have a chance to go get a surefire thing, you got to do it now. And like I said, because of how the career is, whether it was injuries or consistency, and I know injuries have played a part into that, it's got to be Danielle Hunter.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's where they're going to look, because I think also, I mean, Chase Young obviously fits too in terms of what Nielsen likes, but I think Danielle Hunter, that is what he wants. Like, he wants that big edge rusher. That's exactly what Danielle Hunter is. Great length, 6'5", 263. This is exactly the type. So this is why we're talking about it. It's not just like, oh, we need a good pass rusher, just pick one out of the hat. It's like, no, this is the actual scheme fit guy that they want. So we'll see what develops, but I think that he would be the one I would put my chips on if I was going to bet on something that absurd, with that high of odds, probably, if that's even something that they would offer. But Danielle Hunter next team, Atlanta Falcons. I wonder what the odds are on that. Somebody bet online. Send me the flyer on that one. But
there you go. There you go.
Get that plug in there. Yeah, lots to talk about. If the team keeps winning, the more games they win, the higher the chance of a trade like that happening. If they're sort of languishing, 500 or lower, probably not going to send out the assets for a guy like Hunter. But if they're really in the mix, especially in the next couple weeks, and the Vikings keep losing, then the heat's going to get turned up on the intensity of that potentially being a thing. And I'd love it. That would be a home run. So.
Yeah, because the way it looks like right now, and of course, since it's only week 5, I know a lot of these teams are clumped right there together. But at least for right now, they're like 8 teams, I believe, ahead of the Vikings in terms of, and that's just a wild card. I'm not even talking about the 4 division leaders. So that's a lot of, not only is a lot of ground, there's a lot of teams that you have to jump in there too. So it's like you said, we have to see what happens. And again, obviously, I'm not, nor are you, Kevin. I know you aren't. We're not hoping and wishing that someone is going to be hurt, but obviously, like, it's no surprise if Justin Jefferson's out, that offense is very severely compromised, especially with now, the run game's going to not be as good without Dalvin Cook there anymore. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for that team. So it wouldn't surprise me to see them struggle depending on how that hamstring of Justin Jefferson is. And if that's the case, well, it's like you said, what is the point for the Vikings with, you already have Justin Jefferson, he's not re-signed yet. They don't have an extension for him. Kirk Cousins, pending free agent. So, what is the mark for them? Especially when I'm sure in that building, they came into this year thinking NFC North repeat, or at least contend for it. So what is the point where it's like, okay, this isn't working. We gotta punt and just try to, try to build this up some kind of different way.
Yeah. And their next 3, they're at the Bears, so they got a shot in that one.
Yeah.
But we did just see the Bears poop on the Commanders, so who knows with the Bears anymore. But then they got to go. Then they got to play the 49ers.
Yeah, have fun with that.
Yeah, and then they got to go to Green Bay, which Green Bay, as we've seen, like, Green Bay's not a great team, but they're definitely like competent. The Falcons and Green Bay, I think are pretty similar teams. They've got a good defense with the offense. It's kind of finding itself. And then week 9 at Atlanta. So can we get this deal done before week 9? That would be my hope. So then we can get the the revenge game. That'd be perfect. But that that would be a cool one. That would be one that I would enjoy. I would like that trade for sure. But Jordan, appreciate your contributions today. Another great show here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Anything else, guys? He's at Big75 Fella on the Twitters. Let the people know about your other show, and if you got any final takes, you can feel free to let them fly now.
Yeah. So again, Clint Goss and I, the Falcon Fade podcast, it's run by Stadium Rant. We always do a reaction show that'll be airing in Atlanta on Mondays, I think 3 to 4. Also, we'll do a preview show that we usually do later in the week. It gets out on Saturday mornings, getting ready for where the Falcons are playing coming up. And other final notes, final thoughts. We're recording this on a Monday. So by the time it comes out on Tuesday, game 2 will already be done. But can the Atlanta Braves please score some runs? Like, I'm begging of you now. If the Falcons didn't score more points than the Braves did, that would have been a very, very big problem, and we would have had a whole different conversation on the podcast today. But like I said, Miles Robinson, and I love Miles Robinson, phenomenal defender for Atlanta United. He scored more goals than the Braves did runs this weekend against Columbus. That can't happen. Snit, put the lineup back to what it usually is. When I see that lineup today, I want to see Acuna, and then Albies, and then Riley, and Olsen, and Ozuna, and Murphy. And you get the rest of the point. I don't have to name the whole lineup. All right? Yeah. Let's get some runs up. Let's tie this up 1-1. Let's go to the bank, get at least one there. So game 5 is back in the A. We move on to go play whomever else. I don't care who it is, because I'm going to pick the Braves anyway. But please, Braves, let's score some runs. That's my final thought.
That I like that. Yeah, go Braves. Good luck today. Whenever, and you guys go crush it. We believe in you. Here on this podcast, Pro Braves podcast. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Also wanted to give a shout out to Bijan for that absurd catch. That I could watch that all day long. That is just the most insane. Like it's like he doesn't even think, he's not even thinking about the ball. He's just like, yep, I got it. You know, it's fine.
It was literally the perfect time for the Allen Iverson comps because
yeah.
you're crossing somebody, the ball behind your back. Like
Yep.
it was incredible.
It's just, yeah. I mean, I don't think people like they didn't throw it to him nearly enough in college, but you could see it. Like when he caught the ball, it was just, he was such a natural receiver, like a catcher of the football.
Absolutely.
He just it was always beautiful how he caught it. It was always clean. You know, obviously everyone drops when you drop the ball. Sometimes it happens, but we're seeing that absolutely play out, that his catches have actually been, like, he's had some great runs, don't get me wrong, but his catches have been almost as impressive. Just like, oop, yep, I can keep that. I don't even need the other hand. I'm going to use that to stiff arm this guy while I make this catch with my one hand.
Even that final drive, I believe he had one on the left sideline. So again, this is not even, because I believe he's right-handed. So he's using he just sticks his left hand out. Okay, here we go. Boom.
He's fun. He's ambidextrous. He's very talented. Yeah,
he's insane.
But guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. Another big dub here on Falcons Trench Talk. You could follow me, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin. You can follow Jordan at Big75 Fella. Please like, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Leave that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Check out the community Discord server in the comments. Check out our Patreon if you want to help us out, support the show. The show was, of course, presented by BetOnline. Guys, we will be back on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. for the next Falcoholic Live show. We'll see. We're kicking some guest ideas around. So as far as I know, Adnan hasn't gotten Matt Ryan yet, so we're very disappointed in him. But you know,
will someone tell Adnan to get that effing set already?
Yeah, come on, Adnan. You know, you had the white whale right there, and you just somehow didn't even get it done. So that's, you know, Adnan is just not pulling his weight. You know, he was the Falcons offense, you know, the last couple of weeks, not the Falcons offense in week 5. So, so come on, buddy. No, but thanks to everyone for tuning in today. We'll see you guys next time on the Falcoholic Live and Dirty Birds and Brews. Until next time, guys, have a great day.